I saw him when the fog opened for a second, and I knew I'd taken the wrong turn. He stood off the path, tall, not moving, just there in the gray. I said, "Hey," because that's what you do, I guess. It came out small. The fog ate it. No answer. I stepped once, twice. I looked down. New wet footprints showed up beside mine. Not over them. Beside. Big, heavy, dark wet on dry gravel. I spun and shined my phone light around. It only went a few feet before it turned into white. The shape was gone, or I couldn't see it. The footprints beside me were fresh and shining. I tried my map. The blue dot jumped and then froze. Bars dropped to 1. Then nothing. The screen stuttered, and the clock on my home screen stuttered too. It blinked 8:14, 8:15, then went blank, then came back as 8:14 again. I shook it like that would help. "Fine," I said. It felt stupid, talking, but it steadied me. "Fine, I'll just pick away." Left was lower, felt wetter. Right was a faint lineup. I went right. Fog soaked my face and collar. It felt cold, even inside my jacket. My pack strap rubbed the spot on my neck that always gets sore. One of the straps had been fraying for a while. I kept telling myself I'd sew it. I hadn't. A path narrowed. Grass to one side, a fence line on the other. Old wire, crooked posts, a thin run of dirt beside it. I put my hand on the top wire to keep straight. It was wet and cold. I walked it. A bell sounded far away. Just a single bong. Then again, slow. I don't know if you've been out by water in fog. Sometimes you get those buoys with bells. It sounded like that. But I wasn't close to the bay. Not that close. I remembered a trail map on a board back at the lot. Marsh on one side, scrub on the other. Maybe a canal. The bell came again and made some weak echo. "Hey, I tried again. Anyone out here?" My voice sounded dumb in my own ears. I didn't want to seem scared. I felt stupid for being off the path. It wasn't that late when I started. The fog came quick, though. I took 5 more steps. The wire hummed under my hand, just my glove sliding on it. Then it vibrated, like someone plucked it farther down. That went up my arm. I froze. I held my breath. That's when I heard the breathing. I thought it was me at first. I thought I was just hearing my own breath in my hood. It was steady. Slow. In. Out. Not big gasps. Just like someone asleep. Close, though. Too close. I turned my head. The sound didn't change places. It felt right beside me and also not anywhere. "All right," I said. Not funny. I wanted to sound annoyed, not nervous. "You got me! Good one!" A gust came, weak but cold. The mist shifted and then settled. The sound stayed. It didn't even wobble with the wind. I moved again. My hand slipped on the wire and I almost fell. I set my boots down, careful. Crunch of gravel. Squish somewhere. I smelled wet earth. I got my head down and watched my feet. The ground was patchy. Dry enough where I was, but dark in spots where water seeped. I came to a spot where the fence turned, or I thought it did. The wire bent away. The path went straight. I stood there and pawed the ground with my boot. Fresh, wet prints were by my toes before I moved again. A pair of them. They weren't there a second ago. Wide, boot-shaped, but longer. The water around them started to bead like breath had hit it. I jerked back and my heel slipped in a rut and I went down on my side. My shoulder hit a post. It rocked and something cracked in me or the wood. Pain shot into my collar. I swore. I sat up fast and the whole world was white. Fog was in my eyes, in my mouth. Cold, wet, the taste like old pennies. I wiped at my face and my fingers came away wet. The breathing didn't speed up. It stayed steady. I tried to find where it came from. No use. It was like how you can't tell where a fridge hum is. Everywhere at once, but close. I could have reached out and touched whoever it was and still missed. "It's late," I said. "I'm leaving. I'm going back to the lot." My phone buzzed once, then went dead. No light. Black glass. I hit the side button. Nothing. I held it up and in the dim, the screen flickered and flashed the time. 8:22. Then the numbers went all lines, then gone. I got up. My shoulder radiated pain. The post I'd hit had a smear on it. Dark, like open wood. My sleeve was wet. I worked my arm. It moved. Fine. I took the path straight, left the fence to my right. The bell went again. Out in the thick. Closer. Hard to tell. The next stretch rose. I saw a darker shape ahead, like a low ridge. A berm. I figured it might get me above the fog a little, or at least out of the low wet. I scrambled up. The dirt slicked under my boots. There were chunks of concrete in it, and broken bricks. I grabbed what I could. My hand slid on something and skin went hot. I pulled back. Knuckles scraped open along the fingers. They stung and then went numb in the cold. "Great," I said. "Just great." Blood was thin in the damp and got washed. I wiped my hand on my pant leg and kept climbing. Something pulled on my pack as I went. Not hard, just a catch, like the strap snagged on a root. I tugged and it didn't give. I looked back. The strap hung on nothing I could see. It was just tight. I yanked hard with a little panic and the strap came free, but it made a tearing sound. It held, but now it had a long rip line in it, almost through. I slid the pack up higher on my shoulders and kept going. At the top, I stopped and tried my light again. The fog ate it. The beam was a little room I stood inside, and the world ended at the walls of white. Wind touched my face, and the mist moved like a curtain for a second. Down the slope, in the cut between berms, a shape stood. Tall, straight, no color, just there. The fog slid past it. The wind moved the fog and the shape didn't change or smear like a tree would have or a sign. It stayed exactly itself. My light hit it and didn't make it sparkle or shine. It just stuck. "Hey," I said again. Automatic. "Can you hear me?" That breathing filled the room of my light. It was in front of me. It was behind me. It was in my ear. I turned the beam. The shape didn't get closer. It didn't go. It was like my light pinned it, and the fog wanted it, but it wasn't part of any of that. I could count if I wanted to. 1 step. 2. 3. It was maybe 5 or 6 long strides away. I didn't want to count, though. I made myself not. The breathing drew in. I felt that one in my throat. The next one out felt like air moving along the hairs on my face. The next one in felt like it borrowed something of mine as it went. I almost said sorry to nobody. I didn't go down the way I came up. I went sideways. I slid and half fell and dug my heels and banged my bad shoulder again on a chunk of concrete and swore. The next moment I was running without deciding to run. The ground flattened and then dropped and I almost went head first. I windmilled and caught a sapling and it bent under me, wet leaves smack in my face. I spat and kept running until I hit something at shin height and went down hard on my hands and knees. Pain lit up my knuckles and both knees. Gravel burns skin. One knee felt cold right away and I knew the fabric was gone there. The thing I'd tripped on was a pipe. Round, low, dark mouth. It smelled like cold metal and mud. A drainage tunnel under the road, probably. Water trickled in it. Not much. Just enough to sound like whispering. The bell went again. It echoed from the pipe mouth, like it was coming through it. Behind me, the breathing stepped closer. It didn't make steps, but it felt closer. It pulled at my hood without touching it. Okay, I said to myself. Okay, under. I got on my stomach and pushed my pack in first, and then slid in. The pipe was high enough to crawl on knees, barely. I put my phone in my mouth to free both hands, then remembered it was dead. I took it out and stuck it in my coat. I used the little flashlight from my pack. It worked when I hit it with my palm. A weak cone of light lit old graffiti and slimy wet and a spider that lifted slow legs like it was in thick syrup. I crawled fast and bumped my head and swore again. The cold in there went right under my jacket. My knuckles left little streaks where skin dragged along the concrete. The light moved and my breath puffed in front of me. The tunnel steamed a little from the difference out there and in here. I was halfway in when something closed on my boot heel. It wasn't a hand like I know a hand. It was pressure. It was direction. It was held. My foot caught. I kicked back with the other and hit concrete. I twisted and the boot stayed. I felt the sole peel a little. I yelled and it turned into a sound I didn't want to hear from myself. Let go. Let go. I slammed my foot down again and again and the hold didn't change. It didn't tighten. It didn't loosen. It was just there. I used my hands and pushed forward, and my knee slammed and a spark went through my kneecap. I grabbed the top of the pipe with my fingertips and pulled, and my skin left there. The edge was rough and I felt it. When it finally gave, it wasn't that my boot came free. It was that the thing that had it just wasn't holding it anymore. And when it stopped, there was one more wet footprint on dry concrete, right there beside my knee, like something had knelt next to me inside the pipe. It looked dark, and then it started to bead up like the rest of the water did when you breathe on a cold window. I burst out into air that didn't smell like metal, and I rolled and lay on my back in some weeds. I held my foot up. The heel of my boot had a ragged tear along the seam. Not all the way. Enough that it felt slippy. My sock was wet through. I lay there, breathing hard. The in-out I made had a wrong twin, slow and steady. That didn't match me. I sat up and forced myself to listen. The twin kept going after I went quiet. I steadied my light on the pipe mouth. White rolled out of it, fog like breath. Stay, I said to it. Stupid. Then I crawled backward and stood, and the world turned into a flat space of parking lot, covered in moisture, slick like someone had sprayed it. I saw the visitor center on my left, a long, dark building with a glass front and the map board on a kiosk by the door. I knew this place. I'd been here in daytime, last fall, with people and kids and the smell of sanitizer in the bathroom. I'd eaten a granola bar under that overhang. I headed for it like it would be safe just because it had lights sometimes. The doors were big glass with bars across the inside. There was a sign that said hours and another that said closed. I grabbed the handle of one. It thumped in the frame. Locked. I looked into the glass. My light bounced back at me. It also threw my shadow across a counter and a display with fake birds on it. Condensation gathered on the inside of the glass in a skin. I put my face close to the window without thinking, and my breath fogged it more. I tried 911. I don't even call people. I stood there with my thumb on the numbers like I was unlocking a safe. It rang once. Then it clicked. I heard a voice say one word that I didn't catch, and then the line filled with that same slow breathing. 1, 2, 3 cycles. No voice under it. It wasn't static. It wasn't a recording. I hung up and it didn't stop. The phone stayed on, and the screen showed 9:03 while the battery icon didn't change and the time didn't move. My watch on my wrist read 9:14 where before it had said 8-something. Then the second hand jerked forward and then stopped. I tapped it. Nothing. I put my ear close. The tiny tick-ticks weren't there. Help! I yelled toward the building and toward the fog. It felt dumb and desperate, but I did it anyway. Help! Anybody. Sound slid off the glass and into the gray and didn't come back. I pulled the whistle from my chest strap and blew. The sound was thin and too loud in my head. It bounced around the overhang. The bell clanged out past it, slow and even like it didn't care. The breathing was right at the glass now, on the other side. I knew that. I didn't hear it through the glass. I heard it everywhere like before. But the glass started to quiver. It was a full sheet of it. The whole door bent in a slow, long bend, like someone leaned their weight dead center. The metal frame made a tiny ping. I stepped back and raised my light and told myself I'd see my own scared face and nothing else. I held the light steady. It flickered and the battery icon on it went red and then green and then red. I slapped it and it held. The fog outside the glass moved. The fog inside the building didn't, because there wasn't any. But when the bend came in the door again, wet handprints bloomed on the inside. Not outside where something might be. Inside. 2. Then 2 more above them. The water streaked down, as if whatever had put them there was pressing harder, and it was still cold enough inside that they steamed a little. The prints weren't perfect hand shapes. The fingers were long and a little wrong, like the pad parts were wider. The smears moved up like it was climbing in place. Each new press left a mark in there with the fake birds and the brochures. I said, no. It sounded like I was talking to my own mouth. No. No! Don't do that. My legs did the thing where they want to lock and run at the same time. I backed up till my pack hit the map kiosk and the board shocked dust into the air. I angled my light down and saw wet footprints appear between me and the door. 1. Then another, offset like a person walking. They filled up with water, but they didn't splash. They were just there, appearing in the sheen on the concrete overhang. I didn't see them get made. They were not there, and then they were. They came right to my boots and stopped. My boot prints were dry-ish, except where my knee had bled. The new ones were darker. They matched my step length like someone had been pacing beside me for a while and had decided to show it now. The door flexed again and held, and the metal groaned like a big animal. Air pulled in around me and my lips went cold. It wasn't wind. It was like it took my breath. I covered my mouth without thinking, glove pressed, and I felt the exhale draw out of me anyway, thin and forced. I got dizzy. I bent down and grabbed the bottom of the map kiosk just to have something that wasn't moving. My knuckles smeared blood and water over the sanded wood. I fumbled at my pack for the flare. I always had one because you don't know. It was stupid to carry in a marsh, but I did. I pulled it from the side pocket. The strap ripped another inch, and I didn't care. I pulled the cap off and tried to strike it. The grit scraped. Nothing. I tried again, harder, and the scritch skitched, and a baby spark lit and died. The air pulled cold from my mouth again, and the glass pushed in toward me, and I saw the bolts on the frame move a hair. Come on, I told the flare. Come on. I tried the other end. Nothing. My fingers felt fat and wet, and they didn't want to grip. I cursed. I pressed the flare head hard and did a weird little dance in place because I couldn't stand still. My light flickered again. I slapped it. When it came back, it washed the inside of the building. The room was simple. Counter. Displays. A rack with cheap ponchos. The wet handprints were all over the glass now. Up, over, a smear down, like a kid playing. Something pressed where the bar went across and the screws made little points. "Stop," I said to it. Louder. "I see you. You can stop now." I was bargaining like it was human. I knew it wasn't. I knew there wasn't a human who could bend a door like that without any sound but breath. I also knew if I thought of it as something else, I would sit down and let it happen. I blew the whistle again and again. The sound hurt my ears. The bell out there clanged again like it had a job, and it was nothing to do with me. The fog got thicker and my light shrunk. The footprints in front of me disappeared as new water from the air settled and made everything one slick sheet. The breathing got excited for 1/2 second, like someone smothered and found air, and then it went back to slow. I thought about that when I didn't want to. The idea that I was air. The idea that it was patient. The flare finally took. It hissed and threw red and stank like hell. Sparks dropped and made little black stars on the wet concrete. The glass stopped flexing. Not all the way. Enough that the bar pinged back into place. The wet handprints stayed. Water ran from them in new thin lines. I put the flare between me and the door and I walked sideways with it. The light didn't reach far, but it was a different kind. The fog looked different in it. It was darker and thicker and it moved in layers, like smoke. I held the flare out in front of me and went down the front steps and off the overhang. The red lit my boots and the prints I made. The bell went again, and the sound had something under it this time, maybe waves. I followed where the lot opened into the road. I knew the road had to be there. I came here in a car. Roads don't go away just because you get scared. The breathing stepped with me. That's how it felt. I came off the concrete, and one foot hit the asphalt and slipped, and I pinwheeled and almost went down. The flare spit and singed the strap of my pack, and a corner of it went black. I pounded it out with my palm. My palm burned. I didn't feel that till later. I walked faster. The fog closed and opened and closed. My world was red and the edges breathed. The watch on my wrist ticked once. The second hand jumped and stopped again. I heard it in my head like a cheep. I laughed once. Short and ugly. I said out loud, "This is stupid. This is stupid and I don't get it." That helped only a little. I hit the road by the sound of my boots. The texture changed. The smell changed. Asphalt smell. Oil and wet. I turned toward where the lot should be, toward where I thought the highway ran. I jogged, careful. The flare sputtered and hissed and popped. I angled it to see ahead, and the fog swallowed the red like it had swallowed the white. I heard tires on wet, far off. I couldn't see lights. Something moved in my red. Something tall and straight and thin. It was across the road, then on the shoulder, then in the middle. Like the distance between those places wasn't real. It was where I aimed my eyes. I stopped and held the flare higher. The end spit more sparks. Some stung my wrist, and I shook them off. The tall thing showed as a darker shape inside the red, then clearer, like when you look at a knot in wood and it turns into a face. I told myself not to blink. The fog moved a little with the wind, and the shape stayed exactly itself. Not a post. Not a sign. Too tall. It didn't have a hat. It didn't have hair. It had the idea of a head and the idea of shoulders. It wasn't a person, but it had a person's size. "Move," I told it. I didn't want my voice to break. It did a little. Move. Please. That breathing was in my mouth now, not just besides. It made my tongue feel big. I stepped left. The shape stepped without stepping, same as before. It was still where I wanted to go. I took another 2 steps and it got closer the way a thought gets closer, not the way a man walks. The red flare lit its front and I saw water move on it. The water ran the wrong direction for a second and then it ran right. It pattered on the road. It made a circle. The smell grew like tide pools. The bell went, louder than it should have, right over our heads. It came then. Not fast. Not running. It just arrived. My boot lifted and a hold went on it, like in the tunnel, but harder, my ankle this time. I yelled and it sounded weak. I shoved the flare in the spot where I felt it and I hit something. The red exploded brighter and the hiss went higher. The smell got chemical and the water smell turned to burned water. There was no resistance like flesh. There was no give. There was a nothing that still had position. The flare did something though. This time, when I pushed, the hold let go like a dead hand would let go if you pried the fingers back. The air rushed and I felt past it. I had to hold the flare exactly there to keep my foot. I did. I shouted for help and waved the flare high because that's what you do on the road. Headlights pulled out of the fog as if a screen lifted. A truck horn blasted once. I was on the middle line. I didn't remember moving there. The driver swore. I didn't hear the words, just the hurt in them. I flung myself to the side and the truck braked hard and slewed and stopped 30 feet past me. The flare hissed and spit and died down like it was tired. The shape moved with me, or it stayed where it was and I moved around it in a way I didn't choose. I kept the red between us and backed toward the truck. The door opened and a man leaned out and yelled, "You all right? You drunk?" He looked at my flare and squinted. "Please," I said. "Please. Please." I didn't care what he thought I was. He looked past me into the fog, got a look I know on people who see something they don't want to deal with, then smoothed his face like it was nothing. He said, "Get in the cab." "Come on." The flare had an inch left. I held it to my side like a sword and slid along the truck. Wet handprints bloomed high on the side window on the passenger door as I reached for the handle. On the inside, the man jerked like he'd been slapped and swore again. "Jesus," he said. "Jesus? What the hell?" The breath in my ear didn't go anywhere. It did a long inhale. I felt my lungs pull in with it, pulled whether I wanted to or not. It didn't take my air. It borrowed it and gave it back wrong. Cold. Dry. I got the door open and climbed up. My shoulder screamed when it scraped the edge. I slammed the door. The glass bowed in a tiny way I could see and I put the flare right against it. The red flared up once more and then died, clicked out, left a smoke that smelled like fear. The handprints that had spread on the inside of the glass faded down the glass like someone was dragging their hands away. The driver put it in gear without me saying anything. He looked at me quick, then back at the road. He was mid-50s maybe, beard, hat with a feed store on it. He didn't look like he joked a lot. "You got blood," he said. "You need a hospital?" He drove slow at first, then faster. The fog ahead of his lights was a wall, and then a wall closer. The bell sounded dull behind us. "No hospital," I said. I was shaking and couldn't stop. My watch ticked twice and then stopped. I put my palm over it and held it like you hold a strange egg. "Just out." "All right," he said. "We'll get you out." He flicked the radio on. It hissed and then popped and then nothing. He frowned and turned it off. He looked past me at the passenger window. He didn't mention it again. He didn't look behind us. Neither did I. We got to the highway quicker than it felt like we would. The lights of the gas station by the ramp glowed like little holes cut in the fog. He pulled in and let the engine idle and looked at me straight. He said, "You want me to call anyone? You got someone to call. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Don't," I said. My voice cracked. "Don't call. Just give me a minute." He nodded slow. He didn't ask more. He got out, said he was going in for a coffee, asked if I wanted one. I couldn't swallow. He went. The truck door closed, and the cab felt like a boat with the engine hum and my own breath. I sat and stared at the windshield. Condensation began to gather on the inside, little beads from my breath and the heater. They ran down in thin lines. I wiped them clear. My hand left a smear. When he came back, he handed me a styrofoam cup. It warmed my fingers. I didn't drink it. We sat a minute. He said, "You got somewhere I can take you?" I named my place. He drove me there. He didn't talk much, and I was glad. I tried my phone. It came on like nothing had happened, showed texts from earlier, showed the time like it had always known it. The call log showed my 911 attempt with a duration that made no sense. 46 minutes. It wasn't 46 minutes at the window. I don't think it was. When we reached my place, I got out and thanked him in a voice that didn't sound like mine. He said, "Get sleep," and pulled away. His taillights lost in the street fog. It was thinner here, just ground mist. It was late. I went up the stairs slow, and the old hall smelled like dust and old bread. I put my key in, hand shaking a little. I looked down at my watch because that was habit. It had stopped at 10:12, second hand on the 12. I tapped the glass and it stayed stopped. I went in, shut the door, and leaned on it. My shoulder hurt, and my knees throbbed, and my hand had a row of red along the knuckles, all smarting now that the cold was gone. I breathed in, out, matching myself to slow. I laughed once, short. The sound got stolen by the hall like there was still fog in there. I went to the sink and ran water over my knuckles. It stung and then eased. I looked at the window above the sink. Outside was only a dark square. The glass had a thin film of condensation from my cooking earlier maybe. My breath made a spot and it cleared. I wiped it with my sleeve. Breath hung in my kitchen a little, like the air remembered the other air. I heard it then. Slow. Close. In. Out. It wasn't my neighbor. It wasn't me. It came from the hallway just outside my door. It was both farther away and right in my ear, same as before. I stood still with my hands in the sink and listened. The building creaked like old buildings do. The fridge hummed. And under that, the breathing. Steady. Calm. Like it had a lot of time. I turned back to the sink window because I didn't want to open the door, and I didn't want to not open it. On the outside of the glass, high where my eye level is, a wet handprint had just appeared. It ran and beaded and spread like water on cold. The fingers were a little too long. Another print, lower, showed itself, like someone was bracing out there on my fire escape. They slid a little. The bell sounded, soft like someone had a recording of it on low somewhere in the building. The pressure on the room pulled a cool breath out of me without my say. The watch on my wrist ticked once and stopped. I stood and listened so hard my head hurt. The breathing didn't hurry. It didn't need to. I wiped the inside of the glass with my palm, and my breath fogged it and cleared it and didn't change anything at all. I hope you enjoyed that one. Sometimes these stories stay with you longer than you expect. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe for the next night's story. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe watch another before the lights go out. See you in the next one.